And last but not least, Ms. Lora VIDOVIC, Head of Office, UNICEF Office in Croatia. And she will introduce us the position on Roma education with the special reference to Croatia's educational system. You have the floor.
Thank you. Can I have the mic? Thank you. Well, as you said, last but not the least, I have to thank, first of all, to all of you who bared with us until the very end. It's been a very long day, and I know it takes a lot of patience to not just sit here throughout the meeting, but also to be concentrating and to take really good care of everything that's been said. I'm very happy to be able to greet you on behalf of UNICEF Regional Office. The region in this context means Central and Eastern Europe and Commonwealth of Independent States, but also on behalf of UNICEF office in Croatia, that in the heart of its mandate for these 5 years has also the rights and improvement of the position of Roma children, especially when it comes to preschool education. Naravno, već u 10 minuta je jako teško reći bilo što smisleno i ući u bilo kakvo.
It's very difficult to say something sensible in 10 minutes. In 5 to 7 minutes, it's even harder. So I'll skip some slides in my presentation. I wanted to introduce you to Marko, first of all, the guy who lives in Varaždin County. He is a high school pupil. He's very happy, and he is one of those excellent examples of a guy who is happy with his education, who is planning to go to the university, who is very well received and accepted by his community. So he's really one of the very positive examples. I will obviously not talk about the Convention on the Rights of the Child, because I believe all of you are very familiar with it, and especially the provision talking about the right to education regardless of any feature, any characteristic, including race, ethnicity, and so on. But maybe we should repeat what are the main principles that are important to adhere to in order to make sure that the rights enshrined in the Convention become reality. Obviously, the obstacles that exist for the Roma children are enormous, and I will not list them once again because we are all aware of them. So from prejudices, social exclusion, to some very serious questions regarding standardized tests, the enrollment of schools. From the point of view of UNICEF, we are always emphasizing that the right education starts with preschool programs. So every child should be entitled to at least 2 years of education before they enroll the primary school. Obviously, the differences that do exist in the earliest childhood, and the fact that some children are lagging behind in the earliest childhood, this is something that it's very difficult to overcome later on. This is why preschool programs are the period where and when these shortcomings or the fact that somebody is lagging behind can be overcome regardless of the background of any of the children. I do not want to go into any details. I am sure that you have access to different data, different sets of statistical data, and all of these data will undoubtedly show that the Roma children are involved in the primary school and secondary school to a much smaller extent than children from the general population. Obviously, there are great regional differences, and there are different enrollment rates in different countries and different school attendance rates in different countries. But UNICEF would like every child to be entitled to at least 2 years of free of charge preschool education and to have a high quality primary education, high quality implying not only development of cognitive capacities but also of creativity and so on, which means the different resources have to be available in schools in order to make sure that all the children are given the same chances. We know that educational results of Roma children are also lower, and that gender differences also exist. So Roma girls are involved in schools to a much smaller extent than Roma boys and Roma population in general in comparison to the non-Roma population, and the illiteracy rate of Roma women is greater than that of Roma men. Speaking about Croatia, these data that you can see on the screen have been copied from the draft national strategy, and you can see that the number of Roma children involved in preschool education has been falling, decreasing. So unfortunately we have a negative trend here. So UNICEF strives and will continue to strive in the next years to strengthen the preconditions whereby we would ensure that as large a number as possible of Roma children can attend these 2 years of preschool programs. Something that you can possibly use in your work as champions of Roma rights is the following. It is well known that in economic terms, and we have very precise calculations, the cost of Roma children not being involved in preschool education is very great indeed, of children from vulnerable school groups as such, because it impacts later the productivity of the entire country, it impacts the situation in the families and so on. So it's 0.1% of the GDP. So if this year we decide not to enroll children from vulnerable groups in a preschool program, in 15 or 16 years, this will result in a loss of 0.1% of the GDP. So if we were to calculate this for Croatia of 2011, this would be 340 million Croatian kuna of annual loss, which is a direct result of children from vulnerable groups not being involved in preschool activities. And if we were to include the poverty rate into this calculation, the economic impact would be much, much higher. Furthermore, when talking about data relating to the right to school in Croatia, we can conclude that there is a whole forest of data, but there isn't a single one that we can really rely on. What we know is the 2001 census. In the meantime, there was also a population census in 2011, but we still have no results of that census. There are also some data based on estimates made by the European Commission, made by UNICEF, made by a Roma Education Fund, and so on. And we can all conclude that it is of pertinent importance to pay utmost attention to monitoring situation in the field and gathering proper data so that we can find out what are the measures that provide real results. So these are some of the data that we've managed to find. They come from different sources, and each of them paints a different picture. the reasons of lower educational achievements, I believe there is no need to list them. We are all aware of that. So the fact that children are not even registered in proper registries and everything else that is listed here, and this list is obviously not an exhaustive list. We could all add a couple of bullet points. And all of these reasons are such that it is very difficult to find a solution, and it just goes to show that we all need to be very wise and work together in order to come up with some solutions. I believe we can all agree that it is important to work together to provide support to one another, so not only intersectoral support, but also support among various local communities, cooperation between parents and teachers and children. Children should be there, obviously. We should hear them. And the events of last week in Croatia, in the county of Međimurje, relating to the Roma children and their preschool program just indicate how complex all of these issues are and how important it is to have a timely and proper communication channels. What are the recommendations? Well, once again, this is not an exhaustive list, and I'm pretty sure that each of you could come up with other recommendations aimed at improving the situation. So certainly, sectoral cooperation is something that we can't do without, because the life of a Roma child is also just as complex. It is also important to have a proper legal framework, but the legal framework needs to take into consideration the real life, the real data, and it needs to, we also need to have proper mechanisms whereby these laws will be implemented. It is important to have proper support, including teacher training, updating of different programs, adjustments and assessment of the capacities of Roma children. We know that many of them have poor results of the school entry exams because they simply have very poor level of knowledge of the Croatian or any other official language, and this is why they get sent to special schools. Then social barriers, economic barriers, this is something that we always have to work on, and we need to overcome such barriers. Furthermore, open communication and striving to find a way whereby we could all achieve something together. I really had to run through this presentation, but after this entire day, if there is one message that I would like you to take away from here, it is that we definitely need to invest in early education, effective early education as a precondition that will level the playing field for all the children, including Roma children. Thank you very much for your attention.